Hey there guys, it's been a while, but I've fully recovered at this point from COVID, so we're ready to jump back into the games. And here we're taking a look at Marvel Spider-Man Remastered. Here you can see the settings that I'm running it at. It does support FSR 2.0, and I currently have it set to going with a dynamic resolution scaling of a target of 30 FPS. As you can see here at the stock 15 watt TDP though, the level of performance that we're getting here is very disappointing. And I'm going to let you know now that throughout the whole testing, that is pretty much what ended up being the case on almost all settings. And the reason being is that the 1% lows really struggle in these outdoor areas, and that seems to be a general problem that seems to be present throughout the entirety of the gaming experience. Now this is of course with FSR going with a dynamic resolution target, so it's trying to just hit a 30 FPS average, and it's going to go with whatever FSR settings are going to be the most appropriate to try to get that, at least in theory. You can see here though that the level of performance that we're getting is pretty bad, where we're not even getting averages that are at 30, and our 1% lows being at just 16 means that the overall experience feels really awful to play. And if I switch over to just using the ultra performance FSR preset, you'll see that we do actually net a bit of a gain in terms of performance, but as it stands with this, it's just not good enough. And you can see here that while we are able to at least get a bit better of an average, the 1% lows still struggle in moments where things need to load in, pop in, and things like that. 1% lows in general still struggle all around. You'll see the video will just stutter here and there, and it's just present throughout the whole gaming experience, and it really feels super rough to play. And you'll see that with the ultra performance preset of FSR, we are sacrificing a lot visually. There is a noticeable shimmer to pretty much any moving object. It is just not visually pleasant to look at. If this was running on like a Nintendo DS screen, this would probably be pretty awesome. But on a 15-inch 1080p display, this really looked really rough. And the level of performance that we're getting just does not make up for the overall experience. You'll see that our 1% lows are at least recovering as the gameplay rolls through, but it's really not enough to make an overall difference with how things are performing. But of course, we can try to raise the TDP to improve the overall experience. So switching back to a dynamic resolution target for the 25 watt TDP, you can see here that our 1% lows are at least a little bit better, but still overall are not great, and you'll see noticeable stutter throughout the actual gameplay here. And of course, we're still not hitting that 30 FPS average, but it is actually using a higher FSR setting because of the fact that it really just tries to avoid going with that ultra performance one where it really drops down the resolution. But you'll see here that in more cinematic scenes where there's cutscenes happening, there are just so much stutters, so much of the actual enjoyment of the game is just taken away by the fact that you are at some moments just looking at a stuttering slideshow. And of course, when you get into the actual gameplay, it's not that much better. The game itself is very cinematic and very much has a lot of these cutscene type events that really transition into gameplay, and overall it makes the experience of actually trying to play pretty rough, and it can get very jarring overall. And like I said, this is pretty much present at all settings, at all resolutions. I actually ended up playing the game for a good while, trying out different settings, just trying to get to the point where it felt at least enjoyable to play. I could go through and actually show you all of the different settings, but honestly, I'm going to save your time, and I'm just going to let you know that things are rough all around. So we're going to jump right ahead to 720p with FSR enabled so that I can show you how even at these extremely low settings, the game itself is still going to be very rough. So let's take a look at that right now. So at 720p with the dynamic resolution target for FSR, you can see here that the level of performance that we're getting is still pretty rough just in terms of 1% lows. As the gameplay goes on, things do recover a bit, but there are still those noticeable stutters. Of course, this is at the stock 15 watt TDP. I'm showing you this because there are a lot of systems out there that will not let you raise the TDP or just don't have the thermal headroom to really let you do that. So if you're on a system like that does not let you raise the TDP at all, then this is about the level of performance that you're going to be getting out of it. The averages look fine, they're hitting their target, but overall the actual gameplay feels really rough because those 1% lows drag down the whole experience. And you can see just by the frame time charts what is going on there. You'll see those spikes, and each one of those spikes is a stutter that actually ends up happening. Of course, at 720p, if we set the FSR setting directly to the performance preset, not the ultra performance, because at ultra performance, this looks visually appalling. It is just such a low resolution that realistically no one would ever attempt to run it at like this. So I went with the performance setting instead, and you'll see that the 1% lows really struggle. And this is what I'm talking about. If you're in interior areas and you're fighting enemies in that, you can actually get a pretty rock solid above 30 FPS gaming experience. But while you're swinging around the city and doing things like that, the game itself is going to feel so awful to play that realistically speaking, you won't be able to do it. And going down to the lowest possible setting for FSR really does not improve the performance at all, and it just makes it look visually even worse than this. And raising the TDP up to 25 watts does not really do anything to net us any major gains here. Overall, the averages are going to remain around the same area, and our overall 1% lows are also going to be about the same here. So it's just not going to be a doable experience like this. It's really overall a rough time, and it's just not doable. And this is pretty much the most aggressive settings that we can possibly go with. If our averages were at the level that they were and the 1% lows were just a few FPS away from that, this would be a perfect experience. But as it stands right now, this is just not enjoyable. Of course, if we switch over to directly setting FSR to the performance preset like we did before, we do at least net an improvement in the 1% lows, but those stutters are still going to be present throughout the gameplay. You'll see those frame time charts are still not smooth or anything like that, but our averages are looking nicer here. But visually, the game does look kind of rough. You might not be able to see it clearly throughout the YouTube video because YouTube unfortunately does compress the hell out of the video. But if you're looking at this on the actual machine, it really does look pretty bad, and everything has a shimmer to it. Anything that moves on the screen, the edges just look really bad, and it can be very distracting. Now, if you're really desperate to play this game, you might be able to get away with playing it like this, but overall, this is about as good as it's going to get realistically for most people. We can, of course, raise the TDP even more and set it all the way to 30, but there are very few systems out there that will actually be able to properly support that TDP on here. But of course, we can take a look at that in terms of what it does to the overall gameplay. But as it stands, this is about realistically the best that you're going to be able to get out of this. You can lower the FSR setting even more, but we're talking about 720p running at less than half resolution at that point. So we're talking about such a low resolution that realistically speaking, for a game like this, I just feel like you're better off waiting. Even if it's going to take you a few years to actually get around to playing this, that's fine. The single player game is still going to be there. It's not going to change. The story's not going to be any different. And who knows, maybe by then you'll have a system that has an RDNA 2 based iGPU, and you'll actually be able to play this properly. One thing you need to keep in mind though is that while the numbers that you're looking at right now look decent, this isn't going to represent overall what the actual gaming experience is going to be like in a lot of areas. And you can see that by here where we raise the TDP all the way up to 30 watts, you'll see that our 1% lows still struggle in a lot of areas as we're going through these cinematic scenes and as we're going through the city. And this is the game itself. You know, you can't say that this isn't going to affect the gameplay or anything like that. This is part of the gameplay itself. It is supposed to be this kind of seamless experience. So having stutters and having an overall terrible visual experience here really takes away from the overall experience of actually playing this game. I've been playing it a lot on my desktop, and I can tell you with an RTX 3070 Ti, this just looks and plays like a completely different game. This really is hindering the overall gaming experience, and it takes away a lot from the overall enjoyment of this game. So I would really hesitate to recommend that you try to play this on here. Even if you look at those averages and those 1% lows and you think you can stomach this, why put yourself into that situation? You can play this game years down the line from now when you can get yourself a better laptop. You don't need to get a more expensive laptop because prices will come down over time. RDNA 2 will eventually hit the budget market, and overall you're going to have a better gaming experience. I would really just recommend that you don't spend this kind of money on this game just to play it on a system like this. I think that you're better off spending it on other games that are going to give you an overall better gaming experience. Of course, that is up to you to decide on how to spend your money. All I can do is show you the game and kind of recommend it to you based off of my overall gaming experience of it, and I can tell you that I personally did not enjoy playing the game on here. But anyways, this is pretty much a shorter video than what I normally would do here. I would go through all of the different settings, but this game really, I don't think you would benefit anything from me showing you 900p or anything like that. I'm just letting you know now, I don't recommend that you get it. I would much rather you save your money and get yourself something else that you can actually properly enjoy. But anyways, it is good to be back. It's good to be doing videos again. I am feeling so much better now. I want to say thank you to all of you guys that reached out and asked if I was okay. All of you guys that were wishing me well. I really appreciated it. It really just kept me motivated throughout all of it because I could not wait to just come back to start making videos. So I just want to say thank you so much. You guys are amazing. I will see you guys in the next one.